Hello everyone, I hope this video finds you safe and well wherever and whenever you are tuning in. My Wi-Fi is back, hooray, after a very wild night of weather, but I do hope that you have access to power and Wi-Fi and your families and homes are safe. I thought I'd put together this video just to catch us up on what we would have been doing together in class, so we can take something out of what we missed today. So I'm going to start off with just a couple of housekeeping announcements. Then we're going to move to discussing Pauline Marshall's The Poets in the Kitchen, which I hope you enjoyed. We're going to be thinking through a few important elements of what makes this a really good personal narrative essay, and then thinking through how we can apply those elements into our own personal narrative essays that we're going to be writing. So after we go through the text, I'm then going to have a little activity that you can do in your own time. Oh, that's Mia, she's come to say hello. She is my roommate's chocolate lab and she is very lovely. Sorry, distracted. So we are going to be then doing an activity that just helps you reflect on some of these elements of the personal narratives, and that you can do sometime when you have the time and space between now and next Thursday. Okay, so starting off, thank you so much to everyone who posted on Blackboard. I loved reading your responses. A reminder that I would like at least 200 words for that response. Think of it like a chunky paragraph, like at least 6 sentences, just so you have the space to really develop some thoughts. I won't take any points off this week because I know you guys are adjusting, but 200 words for next week. And then I would also like you to reply to one of your classmates' posts by this Friday at 11:59, and that reply can be at least 100 words. So something that is thoughtful, that poses a question. You can maybe link your classmate's post to your own, or maybe there's something else that stood out to you in the reading, just some kind of response. And we had such an amazing variety of posts on so many different topics, so you guys have lots to choose from. I made a list of all the things that you wrote about. Jennifer, Olga, Kunika and Anastasia wrote about language, particularly the way that language shapes character and personality. Eli, Jinwen, Amara, Kayla, Gia and Humna thought about talk as therapeutic or as kind of a powerful weapon, as a creative expression or as truth. Amalinda and Alan thought about the article in relation to questions of independence and individuality. Sadie posed a really great question about what is more powerful, written or spoken words. Kevin thought about the position of a poet versus a working woman. Brian, Darren, Habibullah and Dana thought about the immigrant experience, questions of cultural assimilation and also the way that America treats discipline, which Joseph touched on too. Trevor thought about politics. Lauren, Yuki, Mohammed and Jasmine all thought about the triple invisibility of being black, female and foreigners, which is a quotation from Pauline Marshall. We're thinking also about the really important intersection of race and gender and immigration status. So thank you for your really thoughtful posts, and please do reply to one of your classmates by Friday. So something else that is essential for us to be doing as we are reading this text, be that electronically or if we have access to it in print, is to be taking notes. Take notes, guys, please do it for me and for yourselves, because you're going to get so much more out of the text if you are kind of thinking through and writing down things as you go. So I like to take notes like by hand, that works better for me. Circling words that you don't understand, making notes in the margin, underlining main ideas, and think about approaching the text as a conversation. The author's talking to you and you can talk back. We're first going to talk about how you approach a text, so thinking about previewing a text. Now, what does that mean? These are the details that we can deduce from an essay or an article or a book, not by going into depth, but by looking at what it gives us on the surface. So, for example, the author, when it was published, where it was published, and the title. So when we're approaching a text for the first time, those are the details that we want to clue into first, which sounds quite obvious, but it can tell us things that can be helpful going in. So for example, this is obviously published by Pauline Marshall in the New York Times. We know that the New York Times is a newspaper that generally caters towards people who have a certain level of education and are more left-leaning. So that can tell us something about the audience. It was published in 1983, so this is not 2021 here. We're way back in the 80s, so that's going to give us some context. And then also the title. Now, I'm not sure if anybody else found this title intriguing. Do we usually think about poets in the kitchen? I'm not sure. If I think about a poet, it's usually, oh, you know, somebody sat in some beautiful room with their quilled pen and feather, you know, writing sonnets to someone somewhere. So poets in the kitchen, that is striking and provocative and does kind of evoke an image in our minds that is maybe a bit surprising. So it's important to clue into those details and feelings before we dive into a text. So let's start with the introduction. I'm going to read it to you now. Some years ago, when I was teaching a graduate seminar in fiction at Columbia University, a well-known male novelist visited my class to speak on his development as a writer. In discussing his formative years, he didn't realise it, but he seriously endangered his life by remarking that women writers are luckier than those of his sex, because they usually spend so much time as children around their mothers and their mothers' friends in the kitchen. What did he say that for? The women students immediately forgot about being in awe of him and began readying their attack for the question and answer period later on. Even I bristled. There again was that awful image of women locked away from the world in the kitchen with only each other to talk to, and their daughters locked in with them. So what's Pauline Marshall doing with the first two paragraphs of her introduction? Well, firstly, she's situating us. We're starting in the middle of a memory. Some years ago, so this is a recollection for her, she's teaching a graduate seminar in fiction at Columbia University. So we have a space and a place and a time. She then recounts this rather provocative claim that this male novelist has made, that women writers are in fact luckier than those of his sex. Now, given the long history of sexism with women being refused publication, having to take fake male names in order to get their work out there, this is quite controversial, and she invites the reader in to question with her, what did he say that for? So by posing a question, we're brought into the action and we are invited to wander with her. And as we keep reading, we find out that the male novelist believes this because he thinks that the woman writer stands a better chance of being exposed while growing up to the kind of talk that goes on among women more often than not in the kitchen because of the way children are or were raised. Now here we have the central, focused idea of this personal narrative essay being brought in, which is the power of ordinary speech. Pauline Marshall goes on to write on the next page that perhaps the proper measure of a writer's talent is his skill in rendering everyday speech, tapping and exploiting the beauty, poetry and wisdom it often contains. And as we read on, Pauline Marshall ties the central idea to her experience growing up. The poets that raised her, whatever poets are supposed to look like, are in fact ordinary housewives and mothers who use everyday speech in creative and powerful and resilient ways that inspire her later on as a writer. So I wanted to take time on this introduction to bring awareness to strong elements of the personal narrative, elements that I'm going to be hoping for and expecting in your own writing. Namely, a creative title, details that situate us, like time, space, place, that the introduction has a hook and draws the reader in, that there is a central, focused idea. We're not trying to do too many things with a personal narrative essay, we're keeping it tight and focused. And that it's personal. The whole point of personal narrative essay is that it tells a story that is meaningful and personal to you. You're the only person that can tell it. Marshall then moves to describe her mother and her mother's friends, women who spend long days scrubbing floor for white families in the neighbourhood and then return home to the kitchen, where, as she writes, they talk endlessly, passionately and poetically and with impressive range about all sorts of subjects. Now I want us to imagine that we are Marshall as a little girl. We're sat in the kitchen in the brownstone in Brooklyn around this table. And I want you to think about the kind of language that she employs to invite us into this memory. So now I'd like you to take about 10 minutes to go through the essay and look for descriptive details that give us a time, a date or a place, or sensory language, and this is language to do with the 5 senses, so sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. For example, she describes the basement kitchen of the brownstone house. So here we have a detail that we can see. It appeals to our visual imagination and anchors us to a specific location. She then describes the warm safety of its walls inside, and warm appeals to our sense of touch, right? We feel warm. And so just in this paragraph, she's already visually and physically stimulating our imagination. Pauline Marshall is also showing the reader something here rather than just telling us. She could have said, inside the kitchen, I feel comfortable. But instead, by describing the warm safety of its walls, we're invited to kind of picture something and then infer that for ourselves, which makes the reading process so much more interesting. So as I said, I'd like you to take 10 minutes and go through this essay and look for what you see, taste, touch, smell, and feel, and make a list. And then I want you to practice this clear descriptive writing yourself. So I'm asking you to go somewhere, anywhere, bring a notebook or your laptop or your phone, anything that you can write with, and I want you to sit and observe what's going on around you, and then write a focused description of your surroundings. So you can avoid describing your thoughts or feelings, simply focus on those sensory details, what you see, hear, smell, feel, be specific. I would like this to be at least 300 words, and you should take a good 30 to 40 minutes. Make sure this is thoughtful. You can find all the details for both Assignment 1 and Assignment 2 on Blackboard, and this will go towards participation. So I won't be grading based on the content, just the effort that you put in. So as long as you do this, you will get full credit. I would like you to submit both of these assignments before our class next Thursday. It'll be on Blackboard under assignments, and that's where you can turn it in. And if you have any questions, let me know. Looking ahead to next Thursday, we're going to be discussing the prompts for the narrative essays, so how you're going to write your own. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and for those celebrating, have a peaceful and happy Rosh Hashanah. And I will see you in class on Thursday.